What happens when polished charm collides with unshakable journalistic poise? What happens when a guest who expects deference and control is suddenly forced to face a host who refuses to bend? This wasn't just another morning talk show segment. What unfolded on the Tamron Hall show was a televised clash between ego and integrity, and it left viewers stunned. The stage of the Tamron Hall show gleamed with its usual warmth. Studio 6A was filled with the hum of anticipation, the overhead lights casting a golden glow across the polished floor. The audience buzzed as cameras swept across eager faces. At the center sat Tamron Hall herself, collected, elegant, every movement deliberate, every glance measured. She radiated the kind of calm authority that made it clear she was in control of the room before a single question had even been asked. On paper, it was supposed to be a smooth interview about Meghan's latest philanthropic endeavor. A simple segment. But from the moment she walked onto the set, the air seemed heavier than the topic suggested. Meghan's posture was flawless, her smile calculated, her outfit understated yet commanding. It was clear she expected admiration, control, and above all, respect. But Tamron's composure hinted that this would not be a conversation easily steered. "Meghan, thank you for joining us," Tamron began with her trademark professionalism, warm but steady, welcoming yet precise. "You've been in the headlines quite a bit lately. Before we dive into your new project, I'd like to ask, how are you and Harry doing? The public is always curious." It was the gentlest of openers, but Meghan's eyes flickered with something sharp before her lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're wonderful, Tamron. Better than ever. Honestly, I find it a little tiresome that people think they have the right to constantly speculate about our marriage. Maybe people should focus on their own relationships instead of obsessing over mine." The audience shifted uncomfortably. A few chuckles rippled through, but Tamron's expression remained neutral, unfazed, her posture unbroken. "Fair enough," she replied smoothly. "But the speculation comes in part from how public you and Harry have been about your personal lives. Do you think that openness invites curiosity?" Meghan leaned back in her chair, her posture radiating practiced confidence. "I don't see it as openness. I see it as correcting narratives that others have twisted. When you're constantly under attack, sometimes you have to speak up. We're just protecting ourselves. That's hardly an invitation for gossip." The audience clapped politely, though the edge in Meghan's tone didn't go unnoticed. Tamron kept her voice even. "And yet, the rumors persist. Some say Harry struggles with stepping away from royal duty. Others whisper about tension between him and his family. How do you navigate those challenges?" Meghan's smile hardened into something closer to a smirk. "You know, Tamron, I think it's ridiculous that people continue to push this idea of tension. Harry and I are perfectly fine. Honestly, it sounds like projection. Maybe it's the media who can't let go, not Harry." There was a bite in her words now, and a few people in the audience exchanged glances. Tamron, ever composed, simply nodded, flipping through her notes with unhurried grace, her calm only heightening the contrast. "Let's turn for a moment to your relationship with the royal family," Tamron continued, her voice steady, almost soothing. "Looking back, do you think there was any way things could have gone differently? Many have suggested that cultural differences, expectations, and traditions might have played a part." Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. "What people don't understand is that I entered that family with the best of intentions. But when an institution refuses to adapt or modernize, there's little anyone can do. Frankly, I don't think the problem was me. I think the problem was them. And if people can't see that, well, that's their ignorance, not mine." The room grew still. The sharpness of her tone contrasted heavily with Tamron's steady demeanor. The weight of her words lingered. "Some would say that's quite a strong statement," Tamron offered gently. "It's the truth," Meghan snapped, though she tried to soften it with another polished smile. "I don't sugarcoat things. Maybe that's why some people have a problem with me. I refuse to play along with outdated traditions that don't serve anyone anymore." A ripple of murmurs passed through the studio audience. Meghan's words hung in the air, heavy, edged with defiance. But Tamron, still poised, didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she shifted the focus with deliberate ease. "You had a successful acting career before your marriage. Do you ever miss that part of your life?" Meghan tilted her head, her expression laced with disdain. Honestly, acting feels trivial compared to the work I do now. I've outgrown that. The idea of me going back to Hollywood gossip and scripts written by people who don't understand the world? Well, let's just say I've moved on to bigger things. Important things. The crowd gave a polite round of applause, though it sounded more hesitant than enthusiastic. Tamron's calm remained unbroken, but her eyes told a different story. She had taken note. "So," she said softly, her tone a velvet blade, "you don't believe your acting career shaped the platform you have today?" "Of course not," Meghan scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "My platform is built on who I am and what I stand for, not on some TV role I left behind years ago." And there it was, the first real crack in the polished veneer. The arrogance, the dismissal, the refusal to acknowledge her past. Tamron, sensing it, leaned ever so slightly forward, her tone still smooth, but now lined with unmistakable steel. "Well," she said, the faintest hint of a smile at the corner of her lips, "our viewers may have their own thoughts on that." The silence that followed was sharper than any applause. The audience erupted in scattered applause, though Meghan's eyes darted briefly, searching for approval that seemed less certain now. The tension in the studio was rising, subtle but undeniable. What had begun as a cordial exchange was evolving into something sharper, something raw, and everyone watching could feel it. The hum of the studio lights seemed louder now, though in truth it was the silence between Tamron and Meghan that filled the air. The audience shifted in their seats, sensing that the smooth surface of a morning interview had begun to crack, and what lay beneath was unpredictable. Tamron smiled politely, her hands folded neatly over her notes. "Meghan, let's speak for a moment about the late Queen. You've shared your experiences with the royal family broadly, but many people admired your relationship with Her Majesty. What was that dynamic truly like?" For a flicker of a second, Meghan's expression softened, then hardened again. She crossed her legs, leaned back, and answered with an edge. "I respected the Queen, of course, but respect only goes so far when the entire institution is stacked against you. People like to romanticize our relationship as if it was something special. But in reality, I was treated like an outsider, always. And frankly, I think the Queen could have done more to stop it." Gasps rippled through the studio. The weight of criticizing the Queen, still a figure of deep respect even after her passing, was not lost on the American audience. Tamron didn't flinch. Her voice remained smooth, her tone measured. "Some might say that's a harsh assessment, especially given the public appearances where the two of you seemed close. Do you feel you're perhaps rewriting that relationship through the lens of everything that followed?" Meghan's head snapped toward her, her voice dripping with superiority. "No, Tamron. I think I know my own life better than anyone else. It's amusing when journalists who weren't there try to psychoanalyze my relationships. With all due respect, you don't know what I lived through." "I do." A sharp exhale echoed from the audience. Meghan's dismissiveness landed like a slap, but Tamron remained unshaken, her calm composure now resembling a fortress. "I don't doubt that you lived it," Tamron replied, steady as ever. "But you've also spoken publicly, repeatedly, about those relationships. And when public figures share their stories, it's natural for the press to ask questions, especially when versions of those stories shift." Meghan scoffed lightly, shaking her head. "Here we go with that tired line again. Versions shifting. Maybe, just maybe, things evolve when you reflect on them. Or would you prefer I stick to the same script just to keep people like you comfortable?" The audience murmured again, tension simmering. Meghan was no longer the polished duchess with carefully measured words. She was barbed, defensive, almost daring Tamron to push further. Tamron did. "Let's talk about the move to America," she said, her voice carrying that subtle weight that told viewers she was steering into deeper waters. "Many saw it as a fresh start. Others saw it as abandoning duty. How do you respond to those critics?" Meghan sat straighter, her tone clipped. "Critics will always exist. Frankly, I don't care what they think. We left a toxic environment. We chose freedom. And if people can't understand that, then maybe they're trapped in the same outdated systems we escaped. I won't apologize for choosing my happiness over a crumbling monarchy." There it was again. The disdain, the condescension. Tamron's eyes, steady as steel, narrowed just a touch. Do you think perhaps some of that disdain for the monarchy comes from personal conflicts rather than systemic issues? Meghan's lips curled into a smirk. Are you suggesting I left because of personal grudges? Please. I think anyone with half a brain can see the bigger picture. This isn't about me being petty, Tamron. This is about injustice. But I wouldn't expect someone outside of that world to understand the layers of it. It was an unmistakable put-down. The audience murmured louder now, some shifting uneasily, others whispering among themselves. Tamron, still unbothered, simply inclined her head. You speak of injustice. And yet, when we look at your life now, the Netflix deals, the book, the podcast, some would say you've benefited greatly from the very institution you criticize. Do you see why people might call that contradictory? Meghan's voice rose, sharp and impatient. Oh, please. The constant obsession with money and deals. We built opportunities because we had no choice. We were cut off. Do you expect us to live in poverty? To just vanish quietly because people are uncomfortable with us succeeding outside of their precious monarchy? Tamron's response was calm, surgical. I don't expect you to vanish. But I do think there's a difference between survival and empire building. And the criticism comes not from the success itself, but from the narrative you've built around struggle. To many, those two things don't quite add up. Meghan's eyes flashed with irritation. She leaned forward, her tone almost mocking. Well, maybe that's because people prefer the fairy tale. The poor little duchess struggling against the big bad palace. But life isn't a fairy tale, Tamron. It's messy. It's complicated. And quite frankly, most people aren't smart enough to grasp that. The insult hung heavy in the air. The audience's reaction was immediate. A few boos, nervous laughter, restless whispers circling the studio. Tamron remained poised, though her patience was clearly fraying. Her next words were slower, sharper. Not smart enough, she repeated, her voice lower now, more deliberate. So when people question your story, when journalists ask for clarity, your answer is that they're simply not intelligent enough to understand? Yes, Meghan snapped, her mask slipping completely now. That's exactly what I'm saying. People don't get it. They never will. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating, the kind of silence that carried more weight than any shouted argument. Cameras zoomed closer, capturing every flicker in Meghan's expression, every ounce of Tamron's unbreakable calm. The clash had reached its peak, live on air, leaving the audience caught between disbelief and awe. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending otherwise. The silence was deafening, even the cameras seemed to freeze, capturing the moment a polished image unraveled into arrogance. Tamron leaned back, her voice calm but edged with finality. Well, she said softly, that's quite the statement. The audience clapped uneasily. Meghan, flushed and defensive, crossed her arms, daring challenge. Tamron wasn't finished. She closed her folder slowly, the snap of paper slicing the air. And we'll pick up right there, she said, eyes locked on Meghan. Because our viewers deserve to see what happens when strong words meet accountability. The camera zoomed in on Meghan's rigid jaw, her defiant stare. The studio air was charged, vibrating. Meghan sat stiff, arms locked across her chest. The audience sensed it. This was no longer an interview but combat. Tamron shuffled her notes, smiling faintly, not warmth, but a surgeon's smile before the cut. Meghan, we've spoken about your departure, but I want to turn now to something personal. Your relationship with the Prince and Princess of Wales. Meghan's jaw tightened. What about them? She snapped. Tamron remained unruffled. Reports suggest tension between you and Catherine. Some say rivalry. Did you feel overshadowed? Meghan laughed. Brittle. Overshadowed? Please. I wasn't competing. I brought diversity, modernity, perspective. If anything, Catherine scrambled to adjust to me. A murmur rippled. Tamron pressed. Yet Catherine's popularity rose as yours faltered. Did that bother you? What bothers me, Meghan shot back, is how women are pitted against each other. Catherine had her role. I had mine. But let's be honest, the institution protected her. Without that shield, she wouldn't last a week. Gasps filled the room. Tamron clasped her hands. So Catherine's popularity is artificial? Of course, Meghan snapped. Do you think people connect with someone who barely speaks? It's branding, nothing more. The insult hung heavy. Tamron let silence work before asking, some might call that envy. Is it difficult seeing William and Catherine thrive in the role you left? Meghan smirked. Envy? I left by choice. If they want to play dress-up forever, fine. I'm above that. Gasps, murmurs, scattered claps, the mood shifting against her. Tamron leaned forward, voice low. You say you're above it, yet you keep returning to them, to grievances. If you're above it, why revisit it? Because people keep asking me, Meghan snapped. Tamron's reply was surgical. But you control your answers. And each time, you return to Catherine, to William. That isn't above, it's fixation. For the first time Meghan faltered, lips parting without words. She searched the audience, then turned sharp again. You know what, Tamron? I don't need to justify myself. You pretend to understand a world you could never live. Don't lecture me about fixation. The tension was electric. Tamron raised an eyebrow, steady. I'm not lecturing. I'm observing what the world sees. And what they see is a woman who cannot stop measuring herself against the family she claims to have left. Meghan flushed, retreating into silence, arms crossed like armor. Tamron shifted slightly in her chair, preparing her next strike. Let's step back for a moment, she began, her tone deceptively calm. Because this isn't just about family. This is about your narrative. You've painted yourself as a disruptor, a voice of change, someone breaking free from an oppressive system. And yet, at every turn, your words circle back to the palace, to the monarchy, to endless comparisons. Some would say your identity is entirely defined by the very institution you denounce. The audience applauded softly, a wave of approval building toward Tamron. Meghan's reply came fast, though her voice trembled with emotion. That's not true. I have my own voice, my own projects, my own causes. I don't need them to define me. Tamron's eyes narrowed, her tone firm but still polite. Then perhaps it's time to prove it, Meghan. Because right now, to many, it seems your platform exists not because of who you are, but because of who you married. And that distinction matters. The studio fell silent. Meghan's face hardened, lips pressed into a thin line. She looked as though she wanted to lash out, but no words came. For the first time, it was clear Tamron had pushed her into a corner, and everyone watching could feel it. The lights glared hotter, though it wasn't the bulbs, it was the tension. Meghan sat rigid, arms folded tightly, chin tilted in defiance. Tamron, calm in authority, placed her notes down ceremonially, as though declaring, "We're done pretending this is just an interview." "Meghan," she said, softer but deadlier, "you keep insisting you're telling your truth, that you've moved on, that you're above the monarchy. But everything about your presence here proves the opposite. You are still defined entirely by the crown." The words struck. Meghan's face twitched, a crack in her mask. "That's not fair," she snapped, voice rising. "I've worked tirelessly, causes, projects, charity. I've built a global brand. I'm more than just—" Tamron cut her off, firmer now. "More than just Prince Harry's wife? Because, Meghan, to the world, that's exactly what it looks like. Without Harry, without the family name, without the palace you claim to despise, you wouldn't be here. No Netflix deal. No podcast. Not this attention you cling to." The audience gasped. Meghan's eyes widened, then narrowed. "How dare you reduce me like that? I had a career before Harry. I was an actress. I had recognition." Tamron leaned forward, gaze sharp. "Recognition? You were a supporting character on a cable drama. You weren't a global icon until you married into that family. That's the truth. And the public knows it, even if you won't admit it." Meghan's lips trembled. But Tamron pressed harder, voice cutting like steel. "You talk about being silenced, about victimhood, but you've profited at every step. You wanted prestige without duty, titles without responsibility, to be adored like Diana, without putting in the work she did." The name Diana ignited fury. "Don't you dare compare me to her. Meghan snapped. "I'm not comparing," Tamron countered. "I'm contrasting." Diana had flaws, but she served, she fought for causes without centering herself. You've turned every hardship into a product. A story to sell. A brand to promote. Murmurs erupted, some clapping, others gasping. Meghan sat frozen, crimson-faced. "And let's be clear," Tamron continued relentlessly, "about your obsession with Catherine and William. Call it media spin, call it favoritism, but truth is plain. You resent them. You envy the respect they command, the steadiness, the love they receive. And you can't stand it." That blow shattered the dam. Meghan's eyes filled with tears. "That's not true," she whispered, her voice breaking. Tamron didn't relent. "It is true. Every interview, every complaint, every contradiction circles back. You couldn't handle not being the center. You couldn't stand not being Catherine. So you left, and you've been justifying it ever since. But without Harry's name, without the crown you loathe but depend on, you're nothing." The words landed like a physical strike. Meghan gasped, tears spilling as she covered her face. The studio was silent. No applause, no murmurs, just Meghan's quiet sobs. Tamron leaned back, calm, steel still in her tone. "I take no pleasure in saying this. But truth isn't always pleasant. And today, someone had to say it to you." Meghan shot up, her chair scraping loud. "I don't have to stay here and be humiliated. This is cruelty, not journalism." Tamron met her gaze, unwavering. "No, Meghan. This is accountability." Security edged forward, but Meghan waved them off, storming out as cameras captured her in tears. When she was gone, Tamron faced the camera, her voice steady, eyes blazing. "What you've seen is not cruelty, it's truth. Public figures cannot demand sympathy without scrutiny. They cannot rewrite stories when convenient. That is not journalism. That is not accountability." The camera zoomed closer. Tamron delivered her closing line, firm as a gavel. "You wanted authenticity. This was it. And maybe, just maybe, this was the moment we stopped confusing celebrity with credibility.